Imagine sharing a home with someone, eating meals, watching TV, going about your daily life, all while something horrifying is happening just a few feet away. Now picture this. Neighbors begin to notice a terrible smell coming from your house. They whisper, they point, but you keep brushing it off. You light candles, you spray air fresheners, you even blame it on garbage or a dead animal under the floor. But weeks go by, and the smell only grows stronger. And then, one day, the police arrive, and what they find behind a locked bedroom door will shock the entire neighborhood and leave investigators with questions that still haunt them to this day. Before the smell, before the police, before the headlines, this story began in the most ordinary way. In a small Florida neighborhood, on a quiet street lined with palm trees and faded houses, two unlikely roommates shared a modest home. The woman, in her mid-40s, was known to neighbors as polite, but distant. She didn't talk much, kept mostly to herself, and rarely entertained visitors. People described her as normal, but also a little withdrawn. Her roommate, a man in his early 50s, was even quieter. He hardly left the house except for groceries, and when neighbors did see him, he never made eye contact. He didn't cause trouble, but there was something about him that people couldn't quite figure out. They weren't best friends, but they needed each other. Both were struggling financially. Splitting rent on the small, aging house was the only way they could afford to live there. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary roommate arrangement. At first, everything seemed fine. Days blended into weeks, and life went on quietly. But slowly, small details began to change. The man's car stopped moving from the driveway. Mail started to pile up. Neighbors noticed the blinds in his bedroom window never shifted, never opened, never closed. It was as if time inside that room had frozen. And then came the smell. At first, it was faint. The woman thought it was spoiled food in the trash. She cleaned the kitchen, took out the garbage, even scrubbed the floors. But it lingered. Days later, the smell grew stronger, sharper. She told herself it must be an animal, maybe a raccoon, or a dead rat stuck under the floorboards. So, she lit candles, sprayed air fresheners, and left the windows open. Anything to drown it out. But the smell didn't fade. It crept into every corner of the house. It clung to her clothes, her furniture, her hair. Neighbors, walking their dogs or checking their mail, wrinkled their noses as they passed. Soon, whispers began. Something's wrong in that house. What's going on in there? And through it all, one disturbing fact remained. No one had seen the roommate in weeks. At first, it was barely noticeable. A faint, sour odor that drifted through the hallway. The woman thought nothing of it. Maybe spoiled milk, maybe the trash can needed cleaning. She sprayed some air freshener, lit a candle, and moved on. But the next day, it was stronger, sharper, the kind of smell you can't ignore. She checked under the sink, cleaned the refrigerator, even pulled out the couch cushions searching for the source. Nothing. Soon, the smell became overwhelming. It clung to her clothes, her skin, her hair. Every time she opened the front door, neighbors caught a whiff too. They whispered, shook their heads, and kept their distance. Dogs walking by would stop in front of the house, noses in the air, refusing to move. One neighbor later told police, that smell, it wasn't garbage. It wasn't a dead animal. It was something else. The woman made excuses. She told herself it was a plumbing issue, maybe a dead rat caught in the walls. She burned incense, sprayed stronger chemicals, even tried sealing off the vents with tape. But the smell only spread. From the hallway, to the living room, to every single corner of the house. It followed her when she slept. It woke her up in the middle of the night. The strangest part, it always seemed strongest near one door, her roommate's bedroom. The door stayed closed, locked, day after day. Weeks went by. She hadn't seen him. Neighbors hadn't seen him. His car hadn't moved. The blinds in his window never shifted. And yet, she told no one. Instead, she convinced herself he had left, maybe staying with family. But deep down, she knew. That smell wasn't going away. That smell was hiding a secret that she was too terrified to face. By the second week, the neighbors had begun to notice something strange. The man's car sat untouched in the driveway, collecting dust and leaves. The mail piled up, spilling from the box. Newspapers gathered on the porch. It was as if time had stopped for him. One neighbor finally asked the woman, "Hey, haven't seen your roommate in a while. Is he okay?" She gave a quick answer though, "He's probably staying with family." Then changed the subject. But the truth, she hadn't seen him either. His bedroom door stayed locked. Always. At night, she thought she heard faint sounds behind that door. A creak, a thud, or maybe just the house settling. She told herself she was imagining it. She refused to check. Meanwhile, neighbors began whispering, "He hasn't been to work. His car's still there. Something's wrong." Some even swore they saw shadows in the window, but the blinds never moved. The smell by this point was unbearable, strongest near his door. She avoided the hallway entirely. She stopped inviting anyone inside. She started wearing stronger perfumes, trying to mask the stench on her own body. Weeks dragged on. The man never appeared. Not a phone call, not a visitor, not a single sign of life. And yet, she stayed silent. Fear, guilt, or something darker. One thing was clear, the roommate hadn't just vanished. He was still inside that locked room. And the longer she ignored it, the stronger the truth pressed against that door. Finally, after weeks of silence, after the smell had become unbearable, the woman made the call she had avoided for so long. Her voice was shaky as she told the operator, "Something's wrong in my house. The smell. I can't take it anymore." Within the hour, a patrol car pulled up outside the small Florida home. 2 officers stepped out, immediately covering their noses. The stench hit them before they even reached the front door. Neighbors gathered quietly on the sidewalks, watching. Some whispered, some crossed their arms nervously. Everyone knew something was about to happen. When the officers stepped inside, the smell slammed into them like a wall. Thick, suffocating, unmistakable. The kind of smell that only means one thing, death. They moved carefully, flashlights cutting through the dimly lit hallway. Flies buzzed in the corners. Wallpaper stained with dark patches of moisture. Every step echoed in the heavy silence. One officer turned to the woman and asked, "Where does it smell the strongest?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to a closed door at the end of the hallway. "That room," she whispered. It was the roommate's bedroom. The door was locked. The officers called out his name. No response. They knocked louder. Still silence. Then, with one heavy shoulder slam, the door splintered open. The moment it cracked, the swarm of flies burst out. The smell grew unbearable. Neighbors outside covered their mouths as it drifted into the street. Inside, the scene was horrifying. The man's body lay slumped on the bed, completely decomposed, almost unrecognizable. The sheets were soaked through, the walls stained. The room had been sealed like a coffin, holding weeks of decay. One officer immediately stepped back, gagging, fighting to keep composure. The other whispered into his radio, "We have a body," requesting detectives and medical examiner on site. The woman stood frozen in the hallway, her hands trembling, her face pale. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only stared, as if she had always known what was behind that door. Outside, neighbors gasped. The reality they had only guessed at was now confirmed. The house was no longer just quiet, it was a crime scene. And for investigators, one chilling question hung in the air. Had the woman really been too afraid to open the door? Or was she hiding something far darker all along? The detectives moved carefully through the bedroom, their flashlights sweeping across the walls, the bed, the floor. What they saw was something they would never forget. The man's body was in an advanced state of decomposition. His skin had turned dark, his features almost unrecognizable. The mattress beneath him had collapsed under the weight of decay. Maggots crawled in clusters, feeding on what was left. The smell of rot was so overwhelming that even seasoned officers had to step outside for air. But what disturbed them most was how long he had been there. The coroner later estimated that the man had been dead for over a month. For weeks, his body left to rot, just feet away from where the woman lived her daily life. There were no clear signs of struggle. No broken glass, no forced entry. On the surface, it looked like he might have simply died in his sleep. But then came the chilling detail. The woman admitted to investigators that she had noticed the smell early on. She admitted she hadn't seen him for weeks. And still, she never opened the door. She lived her life, cooking meals, watching TV, and sleeping in the next room while her roommate's body decomposed behind a locked door. Even stranger, she confessed that at night, in the weeks after he vanished, she thought she heard noises from his room. A creak, a thud, something shifting in the darkness. Was it her imagination? Or something else? Detectives couldn't shake the unease. Was this a case of pure neglect? A woman paralyzed by fear? Or was she deliberately hiding the truth of what really happened in that locked bedroom? The horrifying discovery raised more questions than answers, and every single one of them made the case darker. With the discovery of the body, the case took a disturbing turn. Detectives, neighbors, And even true crime enthusiasts all asked the same question. How could she live with this for weeks? There were three leading theories. Some believed the woman was simply terrified. The smell, the locked door, the silence, it was too much for her to face. Maybe she convinced herself it was something else, because acknowledging the truth meant confronting death head-on. Psychologists call this avoidance coping. When fear is so overwhelming, people pretend nothing is wrong. Could she really have been paralyzed by her own fear? Others argued it wasn't fear, it was indifference. She knew. She smelled it. She admitted she hadn't seen her roommate for weeks. But instead of calling for help, she ignored it, lit candles, sprayed air fresheners, and went on with her life. To some, this wasn't just ignorance. It was a chilling lack of basic human compassion. And then there were those who suspected foul play. Had she been involved in his death? Maybe they fought. Maybe money or rent caused tension. Could she have locked the door herself and hidden the truth, hoping no one would find out? While detectives never found direct evidence of murder, the woman's behavior, the silence, the lies, the delay kept suspicions alive. Even today, people argue about it. Was she a woman frozen in fear? A cold neighbor who simply didn't care? Or a hidden suspect in a crime no one could ever prove? The discovery of the body didn't just shock investigators, it shattered the entire neighborhood. Police sealed off the house with yellow tape. Reporters gathered on the street, cameras flashing. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering about what they had smelled, what they had suspected, but never acted on. Many admitted they had been too afraid to knock, too afraid to ask questions. The woman was taken in for questioning. She sat there pale, trembling, and strangely emotionless. Detectives pressed her. Why didn't you call sooner? Why didn't you check on him? Her answer was chilling in its simplicity. She said, I was scared. I didn't want to know. The coroner eventually ruled the man's death as undetermined. No foul play was officially proven, but the doubts never faded. Some believed it was natural causes. Others swore something more sinister had happened, and she had hidden it. The house itself became infamous in the area. No one wanted to buy it. Realtors described the smell as impossible to erase. Even after deep cleaning, neighbors said they could still sense what had happened inside. The home sat abandoned, a silent reminder of what had unfolded within those walls. As for the woman, she moved away quietly. No one saw her again. Some say she left the state. Others claim she changed her name. But in that neighborhood, her absence only deepened the mystery. To this day, people drive past that street and point at the house, remembering the summer the smell of death drifted through the air. For them, it wasn't just a story, it was a living nightmare they witnessed firsthand. And the chilling truth is this: sometimes the scariest monsters aren't strangers in the dark, but the silence, fear, and secrets that live right next door. And so the question remains, was she just a woman too paralyzed by fear to face the truth behind that door? Or was she living comfortably, day after day, knowing exactly what was rotting in the room next to her? The body gave investigators answers about death. But the woman's silence left behind an even bigger mystery about life. What do you believe? Was this fear, neglect, or guilt? The truth may never be known. But one thing is certain, sometimes the most disturbing crimes aren't just about how someone dies, but about how the people left behind choose to live. If this story shocked you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your theory in the comments. Fear, neglect, or guilt? What do you think really happened?